If you're thinking about purchasing in Rhode Island or you're a homeowner in Rhode Island, one thing that you may be struggling with right now, particularly if you're living in the cities of Newport and Providence, is the aging water infrastructure. I'm Sandy Warner with Warner Realty Group. Let's talk about some steps you can take to head off expensive surprises. Hit that like button if you find this content useful, and ring that bell if you like getting notified about new and interesting information about purchasing in Rhode Island. Did you know that Rhode Island was the first state to declare independence from Britain back in 1772? It took another 4 years before the Continental Congress put together the Declaration of Independence. Why do we talk about that? Because Providence and Rhode Island and New England, Concord, New Hampshire, Portland, Maine, all these other cities were almost 100 years old, if not more, by that time. The earliest water systems in the bigger cities where they were starting to develop some smaller towns and needed water suppression abilities were using wooden logs, including Boston. Boston had the first waterworks system dating back to 1652. Now you'll hear all sorts of urban myth about how some of these old houses still have wooden water pipes, and that's not true. And one of the reasons we know that is the new water systems that move water through communities are too high pressure for wooden logs. But when they are digging to do new water main work or foundations, they do often find those old wooden logs. Starting in 1770, Providence, Rhode Island was actually one of the first of 15 cities in New England to create a more widespread water system for their city. And if you've driven through these two old cities in Rhode Island, Providence and Newport, you can see this large collection of colonial era buildings. So those water systems are dating back sometimes 100 years, sometimes lots more than that. So if you like living in a historic neighborhood and a historic home, you may be dealing with some of these water pipe issues. So let's take a look real quick at this picture. And this is just a very generic view of how a house might connect to a city water system. Why is this important? Because as these systems age, the infrastructure, the pipes that connect the public system, which usually runs in the street, to the private system, which is at the house, have some areas that may be questionable on who owns that. So if your house has cast iron pipes, number one, cast iron pipes were fantastic. They had a life of 100 years. They were very strong. They could resist pressure, and they worked for a very long time. We don't replace cast iron with cast iron anymore, mostly because cast iron is the most expensive way you can plumb your house. It is susceptible to trees digging into your roots. It is susceptible to pitting and degrading inside the pipe. And as it reaches the end of its life, you can start seeing some degradation of the quality of your water. You could, with the pitting inside the pipes, everything gets caught on them. Particularly now where you see people flushing things like baby wipes. I know it says it's flushable on the box. It's not. Don't do that. They get caught where the pipe is pitted inside, and then it backs the water up. So why we're talking about this is if you're looking at a new house or an old house, a new to you, but a house in a historic area, it might be a good idea to think about where is it in its life cycle on the city water lines, and how can you test that? One thing you could do is you could work with a company like we like in Rhode Island. I personally use Guaranteed Rooter. They're very responsive. They work every day of the week, and they've been doing it for a long time. And if you're considering purchasing a house, and particularly if it's an old house like 1700s, 1800s, look in the basement, how much cast iron is left, and how much has already been converted to PVC. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, you might have someone come at your cost, not the seller's cost, and run a camera to the line and see, has it been crushed? Is the pipe crushed anywhere? Is it obstructed by tree roots? Why do we want to know this? Because of the line that runs from your house to the street, how much of it is your responsibility? So think about that. If you have to replace that line, you've got to work in conjunction with the city. You're going to have to open up the street because the city water line is probably in the middle of the street. And where's your water line? Hopefully it's coming out of the front of the house, and that is the most common. But there are scenarios where these streets have developed over time that your water pipe might have connected through a backyard of someone else. So not only do you have to dig up your water line, you might have to dig up a neighbor's. There might be a moratorium on that street for digging it up. You want to kind of think about what's that cost going to be. The other thing to think about is Providence right now is in the middle of replacing a lot of their water main systems or relining those systems because of lead pipe issues. So just some things to keep in mind. You want to be diligent about understanding the history of your wonderful old house that you're looking at. And just knowing that it's time. Everything has a life cycle, and we're now seeing these cast iron pipes reaching the end of their life, and we have to start replacing them, not only in our homes, but where they attach to the street. I'm Sandy Warner with Warner Realty Group. I hope you found this interesting. I